Okay, so I'm in my rock sim. Let's hide the other stuff here. And I want to see at what point in time these rocks stop wiggling. So you have all these rocks that are settling in the ground plane because there's gravity. And I do want this because when they've settled, they have a more natural position than when they're just scattered on top of the grid or the ground plane. So I'm going to look for the frame where where these rocks are settled. So let's see. So we have some small ones that last for a long time. So we don't need to watch the ones that are affected by the ship. Maybe we can see it clearer. It's probably around 80 or a little bit more. So maybe 100. Not all of them are settled after 100. Maybe we can increase our friction a bit more. Let's do something crazy and see what that does. And let's also increase the dynamic friction. And this is basically friction that's applied to a moving object. So let's do 10. I'd say around frame 100, most of the pieces, most of the rocks have settled. Let's check our camera view. Well, maybe they wiggle a bit still at frame 100, but that should be fine. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna skip the first 100 frames and we'll let the animation of the ship, so the ship animation, we'll let that start at frame 100 instead of frame 1. So let's go back to our object. And so if we're gonna skip these first 100 frames, that means that we'll have to adjust our ship animation and our camera animation. So if we would move all of those keyframes 100 frames forwards, and that's what we're gonna do, but then we would also have to make our timeline 100 frames longer. But if you remember there, we had a lot of dead space at the end. So, I mean, we're gonna see some grains falling in this time frame, but it's not gonna be a lot. So let's say we want to keep until 175. So what that means is we only have to add 25 frames because let's do the math. We have 75 frames that we're gonna delete anyways, so that leaves only 25 frames to add. So we can say, let's make this 275. Whoops, so we've added 25 frames. So now we can remove our first 100 frames, but before we do that, we'll have to move our keyframes. So let's start with our camera. So we open up our camera here and we'll shift click translate. And this will give us our animation graph or animation editor, and the graph is over here. We can do it in here, but it's easier to do in this area right here. So these are our X, Y, and Z keyframes, and the black one here is basically selecting all the keyframes. So we can click and drag this. I will drag it to frame 100, so moving them up 100 frames. Like this, and as you can see, the green bar here indicates that we've moved it to frame 100. Now the camera is still moving before frame 100, but that's because we only selected our XYZ translate keyframes and not our rotation keyframes. So this one, I'm just gonna drag to the end of our timeline, so frame 275. So click and drag, whoops, like this. One more. Okay. 275. Okay, so that's fine. So let's close this and also do this to our rotation keyframes. So we're going to start by dragging these keyframes to the end. I think that's easiest. So this one on 175 is the same as the one on 275. So we can just delete this one. Delete. And we'll move this one at 111. We'll move that to 211. So, oops, click and drag. This one is at 95. So let's move that to 195. Click and drag. And then we have one at 35, so 135. And then this one goes to frame 100, because this is the one that started on frame 1. So like this. So now all our camera keyframes have been moved to the right place. So if we click on here, we can see they're all after frame 100. So let's do the same with our ship animation. Click our null, shift click, and then we'll drag the last keyframe to the end at 275, and then we'll just select these ones and we'll move them up 100 frames. Whoops, select and click and drag to 100, like so. Do the same with the rotation. Move this to the end. Hello. Oh, this is so fiddly. I'm clicking wrong. Okay, there we go. Let me check. 275. No. Oh, so one frame earlier. Okay, finally done it, I think. Yeah. And I will select these ones and drag them over. Okay. So this should be good. So let's make a flipbook. Let's do frame 100 to frame 275. Oh yeah, okay, so a couple of issues. It flies off too fast now because we didn't change our Z space position on the last frame of the ship. And I also think it rises a bit fast here, so we need to check that. So go to ship null, and then on the final frame it's at 125, and it had 150 frames to do that before, but now it only has 75 frames to do that. So we have to halve this number. So let's say 60. So now that should be fine. And I'm not sure why it looked like it rose faster over here, because I don't really see it right now. So let's just leave it at that and do another flipbook. Okay, so now it leaves at the speed we had before, so the normal speed. So we fixed that. Okay. So now it's time to remove the first 100 frames. And we're not gonna remove them per se, but we're just gonna get rid of them in our timeline. So they will still need to be simulated and stuff, but we'll just not have to deal with them in here. So we can say 100. And our timeline starts at frame 100. Like this. Okay, so that's nice and clean. So why did we do this? We did this so our rocks would be settled at the start of our clip. So as you can see, it will always have to cook from frame 1 to 100 first. And when it's done, they should be fully settled.